Hi, it's Nathan here, and today I'm talking about the Model WHS Regulations. So Safe Work Australia publishes the Model WHS Regulations, and as of recording this in 2026, all states except Victoria have adopted the Model Regulations. So the regulations are published to provide more practical guidance to business on how to comply with their duties under the Act. So under the Act, the main requirement for business is for PCBUs or business owners or companies to ensure the safety of workers. That's pretty much it. It does expand upon that a little bit. It'll say that you need to provide safe systems of work and a safe work environment and safe plant and structures, but that's pretty much it. Which is good to know that, but it's kind of like, well, what is that? What is a safe system of work? What is a safe piece of plant or a safe structure? That's where the regulations come in. So the regulations will have some sections that expand upon duties or sections of the Act. So things like it'll have an expansion on HSRs, entry permit holders, right to cease unsafe work. But where the regulations start to become its own sort of documents from Chapter 3 onwards, and that's where it starts to talk about the requirements for risk management, so hazard identification, the hierarchy of controls, reviewing and monitoring controls. Then it'll start to talk about hazardous types of work that are universally applicable to all businesses. So things like noise, hazardous manual tasks, falls. And then it starts to get into more specialized areas, so things like confined spaces, construction work, asbestos, hazardous chemicals. And then the further you get in, the more specialized it gets, and finishing with major hazard facilities as the last section of the last chapter. Then it has a bunch of schedules, so things like lists of high-risk plant, lists of manifest and placarding thresholds, lists of chemicals that are subject to health monitoring. So in terms of where the regulations sit in my eyes, the regulations are the document that provides the most practical framework for business to comply with. The Act obviously sits above that and is a very important document. If there's an incident, you'll get prosecuted under the Act. And the codes are really practical documents, the codes of practice. They provide detailed, plain English guides on how to manage certain aspects of health and safety or manage certain high-risk tasks. So in that sense, the codes are the most practical guide, but the fact that there are so many codes, if you're in construction or you're in heavy industry, you'll be subject to 30 codes, and they can be anywhere from 20 to 100 pages. So it's just no business in Australia can really, in my opinion, fully grasp all of the requirements of the codes and hope to implement them. Whereas the regulations sort of sit at that level where businesses should be able to comply with them, and the regulations are legally enforceable, whereas the codes are sort of like can't be enforced, but the codes can be used in legal proceedings as evidence of what you should have done or could have done. But generally speaking, a breach of a code is not a legal breach. Although if an inspector comes out and says, hey, you're breaching this code, then you're generally best to just comply anyway. So that's where the regulations sit. The most important document in terms of complying with the Act. So yeah, 600 pages. If you're in construction or heavy industry, about half of those are going to apply to you. Hope that helps.